Afternoon, everybody. It's a tough day for multiple folks on many levels. I want to remind some of you all that I used to represent professional coaches and family members, the likes of Tony Dungy and Brian Billick and Denny Green and Leslie Frazier and Herman Edwards and Tyrone Willingham and Mike Montgomery and Willie Shaw and Tony Samuel and many others, and unfortunately have been on the other side of those days when those folks and their families were notified that they were being relieved of their duties. So I don't take any of this lightly. What I will tell you very emphatically is that ASU and ASU football is in a much better place today than it was 6 years ago when Todd Graham took over. Indeed, it's in a much better place than the 4 years ago when I joined Sun Devil Athletics to be put in charge of athletics. And so when I think of Todd Graham, what I think of is the things that are very positive. In my view, everything is judged on competitive consistency. And so in matters of academics, and how you want to encourage your student athletes and your football players to be true student athletes, Coach Todd Graham has done a marvelous job, and we will applaud him and thank him forever for having led in that effort. And when it comes to making sure that your student athletes are good citizens and good role models and have proper conduct and behavior, Coach Todd Graham has been competitively consistent. And we will applaud him for that. But I also must measure competitive consistency on what happens on the field. Because at the end of the day, that's what a head coach is primarily charged to do. And competitive consistency, in my view, is comprised of recruiting, developing players that you do recruit into here, developing and retaining your assistant coaches, and then in game preparation and in-game management. That's what I have to assess. And so I didn't judge and don't judge anyone, and certainly didn't judge Todd on any one game or loss. He does not judge on the euphoric victories like last night, nor are we judged on some of the real disappointments that we've had in the 4 years. Rather, I've got to look at the body of work and then honestly assess if going forward we will be able to elevate this program to the levels that we aspire. I came in here 4 years ago, and one of the things that Dr. Crow made very clear to me is we want to compete, and we want to compete from championships, and we want to win consistently across the board in all of our sports. And so in performance on football, we have not done that in the 4 years since I've been here, not consistently. We have been average. 7-5 in second place in a riddled Pac-12 South is not our aspiration. We deserve more. We have the capacity and the university and the community that deserves more, and I very frankly should demand more. We want to play necessarily in second-tier bowls. We want to be in major bowl games on a consistent basis. And my job is to try to do what I can do to elevate us and make us better, and that's why the change was made. And so the intention is to go out and get leadership who will help us make that next step. Now, one of the things that folks have talked about is continuity. There's been a lot of turnover in the staff. How do you handle that? Well, one of the things that we're going to insist on is that the next head coach who comes in here will not be your traditional thinker that says, I necessarily have to come in and clean house and bring in all of my own guys. That would be a disservice to the advancement that we've made under Todd and the improvement that we have seen in this year. It wasn't enough, but we have improved. So the next head coach who comes in here will have to embrace the culture and the philosophy that the folks who have done a good job and deserve to be here as coaches and operations people should have the opportunity to remain here. And we met this morning with the coaches and we told them exactly that. In my view, Billy Napier has done an outstanding job with our offense. In my view, Phil Bennett has helped us make progress with our defense. I've made it very clear to both of those guys that we want them to have the opportunity to come back. And in fact, any head coach who comes in here and doesn't see that value is not the guy for us. And so it's not a situation where we're going to clean house and have to start all over. Manny Wilkins does not need a fourth coordinator in 4 years. That will not be our direction. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do it in a very urgent and quiet search. Some of the questions are, how are you going to fund that buyout? Well, you know what? I came in here and took on the task of running it like a business. And so what that means is I've got to figure that out. I've got to have a plan because there is no state tax money. There is no student fee. There is no nothing that we will draw on to fix our own problem. And so through our own athletic department generated revenues and new ticket sales and whatever we have to do, that's my problem to fix. We have a plan, we'll fix it. There's no state money, no student fee, no handout we're expecting from anybody to fix our problem. That's on us, and we will figure that out. The search process will begin immediately. It will be done in earnest. I will answer some questions here, but I will not, and please understand the reasoning for this, I'm not going to be answering text and phone calls and et cetera from this point on. I'm not going to be discussing the process. I'm not going to be discussing candidates until we announce a hire. No, we're not using a search firm. We are using our own internal processes. There is a working group that will assist us in making this evaluation, and then Dr. Crow and I will jointly make the decision. We understand that there's an early recruiting period that commences on the 20th for a 3-day cycle. We understand that we've got to get the new coach in here to be able to assist in recruiting and making sure that the young men who have committed to us and others who aspire to come here will get a chance to understand who that new coach is, who the support staff and the coaches who will remain with us are, etc. So that is underway in earnest. I will be scarce around here for the next week. We understand that we've got to get moving, and we will do so with diligence. Is there anything else, Mark, you would have me cover? Questions?
If you have a question, raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Paul? Mark? You mentioned the euphoria of the win yesterday. So what was, given that euphoria, what was the conversation like with Todd this morning?
It was difficult like it is with anybody who you like and you respect. And unfortunately, you have to give them bad news. Last night, in bringing the Territorial Cup back, was terrific for all of us, and certainly a proud moment for Todd. But like I said, I can't make any decision based on any one game, no matter how great it is or no matter how poor it is. There were folks after the Arizona game last year who thought I was absolutely out of my mind to not make a move then, because the disappointment was so deep. But we determined that that one game, so neither does last night's glorious victory at the end of the day make the decision. It's the whole body of work that I've witnessed over 4 years that brought me to the conclusion and recommendation to President Crow.
Ray, first off, when did you make the decision? And then, I'm sure you've seen this by now, there was a pretty major outpouring of support for Todd last night after the game. Some people thought that with the staff changes, the Pac-12 record, the signature wins, he had made enough progress to keep his job. What do you say to those people?
Very frankly, again, I don't judge it on emotion. I judge it by the body of work. We were all excited last night. Yes, there have been some major wins, but at the end of the day, we're still a middle of the pack, average, going to a low bowl game program after my 4 years here. And that's just, very frankly, not what we aspire to be. I don't think there's any coach on staff who would tell you honestly that I'm satisfied with being 7-5, second place in a weak Pac-12 South, very frankly, and going to a low-level bowl game, as opposed to being 9-2 and going to a major bowl game where we can really make some noise and really compete at the highest level. We said coming in, we don't want to be average. We don't want to be ordinary. We want to be extraordinary. And so I would say to those folks, that's what our aspirations are, and it's not made emotionally on a great territorial cup win. When did you come to the decision? The decision has been one that I've been contemplating, and I've been evaluating each and every game as we have gone forward. Every single game we assess and evaluate with a working group of very knowledgeable senior administrators. This doesn't come by just looking at one or two. It's the whole body of work. And this year in particular, we did that with great diligence.
Ray, you mentioned not using a search firm. Will you rely on any of your NFL contacts? And if so, can you say who those people will be?
No, I can't say who there would be. Part of our due diligence and part of us just taking care of our business is to seek input and opinions from a whole variety of folks. If there's one thing I know as an attorney, I like data. I like information because I don't know it all. But there are folks out there who have a really good grasp of the market and who's good and maybe who's not, who maybe you should look at and who you should stay the hell away from. And so I do have a lot of contacts because I was there for years and years. And to the extent that I can call on somebody or receive a call and get some input, I'm certainly going to listen. They don't have a vote, but I will certainly take all the information I can from intelligent, objective, non-emotional professionals and others out there who are telling me what they believe to be facts about any particular candidate.
Can you clarify what you said earlier about a desire to have Billy Napier return, or maybe even Phil Bennett, just given that a lot of coaches would probably want to be able to hire their staffs? Is it going to be mandated, or how do you see that playing out?
No, you don't mandate, but what you do is very clearly articulate what your culture is. And I'm really a believer that you got to have the right fit in your culture. And so I want someone to come in with an open mind and the ability to look and evaluate and say, I agree with you. Billy Napier has really upgraded us. And under the circumstances, does it make sense to have yet a fourth offensive coordinator when we appear to have made some progress? And the same, very frankly, with Phil Bennett on defense. We have made some progress. We certainly aren't where we need to be, but we have made some progress. So we would want someone with the open mind and the ability to not do it the same old way that most coaches want to do it. Come in and throw in a grenade, and I want to bring in all my own guys. I don't care whether or not it's been effective, and some people have done a good job before I arrive. We're not interested in that guy.
Pac-12 championships and major bowl games are your goal for this program. How do you believe that moving on from Todd Graham helps that become a reality?
Because I've got 4 years to evaluate that I think we've been average, and I've got to believe that with better leadership in terms of competitive consistency, in terms of the performance and preparation to perform on Saturday nights, will elevate us.
And with what he's done for the program that you mentioned about the culture and elevating them as student athletes, how do you maintain that with a new head coach?
Because that is part of the culture that we will certainly continue and even continue to advance. And to the extent that a candidate isn't serious about our academics for our student athletes and their behavior and conduct, they're not a good culture fit here. So all of those things are talked about very much in detail from the get-go. And to the extent that I have any reservations that they have failed to buy into that, they won't be here because they're not a good fit for our culture. What Todd has done in advancing us in those areas will not be undone or undermined by anyone going forward, or they won't be here. And frankly, I won't be here.
Ray, in trying to reach that next level, do you already have someone in mind, and does that next coach have to have previous head coaching experience?
We have a number of folks that we think will elevate us. Do they have to have previous coaching experience? I think for where we are, absolutely, very frankly.
Ray, can you just talk about, you've said that, you enjoyed working with Todd, you wanted to work with Todd, and you have for a number of years now, but what does it mean to you just to be able to get, being a football guy, to bring your own football coach in here now?
I'm not bringing my own guy in. I'm bringing in someone that I think will elevate and advance ASU football and ASU, the institution. I'm not really concerned about my guy. I want the right guy for the right reasons. And that's what I'm looking at, Jeff.
Ray, thanks. What would you say to those who think that the program's aspirations are too high?
I'd say that they are misguided. They are living in the past. They don't realize what we have here, and more importantly, they don't grasp the vision that Dr. Crow and I and many of the folks who really love this program have. I think they underestimate our potential, and that they're living in the past, and we're about the future. That's what I'd say to them.
Michael Crow said recently that the big salaries that are sometimes handed out to college football coaches are not necessarily in line with the university's mission or fiscal plan. How does that stance impact this process? He's
true, and we're not planning to change that. Our philosophy, and we said it from the get-go, and very frankly, I think most of the chancellors and presidents in the Pac-12 have this philosophy that we don't want to be the SEC or the Big Ten in terms of salaries because we think that the overall experience here for coaches and student athletes and assistant coaches who come here and work in the Pac-12 is worth a lot. We're a state institution. We're not a private institution with goo-gobs of money in our coffers. So we have to be disciplined, and we're going to pay for performance. We're going to be solidly in the middle of the pack. And then in terms of our incentives for performance on the field and academically, we will be aggressively fair.
Right, just to piggyback off Greg's questions, do you feel like, ASU has risen and then dipped at times. Do you feel like you guys have everything in place with the reconstruction of Sun Devil Stadium, with the new football facility, to take that next step?
Certainly in terms of facilities, we don't have to apologize and feel like we're second to anybody anymore, Doug, in my opinion. So that, yes, they will be positive going forward, certainly as part of our recruiting. And then when we add the other pieces that we're aspiring to add, you put those together, then we can go out and compete and recruit against anybody. We have got to be able to go and effectively recruit in California and in Arizona and places in addition to Texas at a high level, because the other Pac-12 schools against whom we play are going to continue to really mine those areas. We have to be able to go out and recruit those areas and others at a much more effective level. We have to get to a point where, in fact, we are recruiting 4- and 5-star football players who want to come and play here because they know the development for the player and the development for the coaching and the retention of the coaching is not going to potentially get in their way if, in fact, they want to go play in the NFL. We've got to have a place where we can attract those athletes who say, I can go to ASU and get a Ivy League, Stanford level education if I can get in the Barretts, but at the same time, no, I'm going to a place where they can prepare me to go play in the NFL. Because there's a program in place, there's processes in place, there are people in place who actually know how to do that. That's where we need to make up ground because, very frankly, we don't have that here now. They have it at SC, always have been, always will. They have it at Stanford. They have it at Washington. At times, they have it at UCLA. They have it at Washington State. We don't have that here. You cannot have a year where none of our players get drafted into the NFL and only one player, a kicker, gets drafted to the combine. That's the proof of what we haven't been successful at.
Ray, you mentioned the financial circumstances and that consideration. How much were you affected in your decision-making process by Todd Graham's buyout, the significance of that, and how much money is owed to him?
I was brought here to figure out how you run it like a business. And anybody in here who runs a business knows that there are times when you have invested money that is not going to produce results for you. There are times when you have to say, you know what? That's an expense I have to bear. Because if I want to get better going forward, I better bear it now. And if I hesitate, all I'm going to do is get behind the 8 ball again. So was it important? Absolutely. Because there's no money coming to us, as I said, to figure this out. That's on us. But that's a cost of doing business, and it's my job as the athletic director to figure that out. And we got a plan. And the plan is to elevate and get better so that we will provide a product that people on a much more consistent basis will want to come pay to see and enjoy and pay to see again and come and enjoy. And that sponsors and vendors will say, it's worth more doing business with you because the product you're putting on the field on a consistent basis is worth it. And at some point, to have donors and others say, you know what, we are really an elite program. I'm going to support it at a higher level. That's what we have to do. And very frankly, that's what we're bound and determined to do.
Follow up on that, Art. Do you feel that athletic directors are handcuffed by just the nature of college football and the way that is these days with the contracts?
No. If you're taking a job, then you know the challenges. You're not handcuffed. You're just challenged to go figure out a solution. And if you aren't willing to figure out a solution, if you feel handcuffed, you shouldn't be in the job. So no, I don't feel handcuffed. I feel challenged, for sure. But we'll figure that out.
Commenting earlier on your preference of keeping the offensive and defensive coordinators around afloat, what are going to be some other characteristics and key traits you're looking for in your new head coach?
Got to be a dynamic recruiter. You've got to be able to go in to anybody's house in Southern California, Northern California, Louisiana, Texas, and sell the vision and recruit.
Lofty credentials define that, Coach. Big name, lofty credentials. Will that define this next coach?
Well, I guess, Bruce, I would say it depends on how you define lofty and big name. But you certainly have to have someone, in my view, that's dynamic, that is articulate, who can really sell the vision, not just of Sun Devil football, but Sun Devil athletics, ASU, the institution, because it all goes together. Correct?
Ray, as you move forward to the bowl game, how does this play out?
The staff is going to work the bowl game, and in the meantime, they're going to do all the duties that a staff would be doing. Because we don't know which bowl game we're going to be in. It's likely, in my view, probably be the Sun Bowl. That's a month from now. In the meantime, we're recruiting, we're working, we're out there. Because also the opportunity for the assistant coaches who have an opportunity to stay, and a number of them will, along with operations, is you're interviewing, man. We're observing you. We want the next person to come in and understand that we have objectively evaluated the folks who should be here. So that means everybody's going to be working for the next month to do what they're supposed to do first and foremost for our student athletes, because they owe it to them. And then that's part of their duties. You know. Did you talk to Todd about that? Absolutely. One of the first things we talked about is, Coach, you've earned the right to coach in this bowl game. I hope you're going to do it. And he said, absolutely. It was never questioned. I saw some fake news about the fact that he had declined that, and somebody else was going to be the interim coach. We just know that's Todd is going to take this game and go win it, hopefully, because these are his guys. He loves this place. He's not going to walk out on them. He certainly made that very clear to us this morning.
You're good, Greg? Yeah, good. Any other questions? You want to just tell me who the next coach is? I'll give you a chance.
What did he say, Mark? What did Greg say?
Ray, are you confident that you'll have someone in place before that early signing period?
It's absolutely necessary. We don't have a choice. Everybody else, they're out there running and ripping and roaring now. There's a reason why when you have to make these decisions, as unfortunate as they might be, particularly in this early signing, people have made them and they're moving on.
You alluded to what you still have coming facility-wise. Is this paying this buyout going to slow down in any way Wells Fargo building a hockey arena or anything that's coming up on a capital basis?
Not at all. Not one iota. One thing has nothing to do with the other. This is our responsibility for Sun Devil Athletics to make sure that we're not negatively impacting anything else we're doing. We'll take care of that.
Ray, when you look back at what this program has done in the past under Frank Kush and the Rose Bowl appearances in the 80s and 90s, is that one of the reasons why you believe this program can be much higher than it is now?
It's been there. It's been a long time though, man. But also you look at the national landscape and you look at our own Pac-12. There should be no question in anybody's mind that the things we have here can attract and should be attracting the elite student athletes who can get us to the place where we want to be. We should be top 3 in the Pac-12, in my opinion, every season. There's no reason we shouldn't be every year top 15 nationally if we do what we're supposed to do.
Have you had an opportunity to speak with any players, and if so, how did the conversation go?
Yeah, we met with the whole team and then a segment of the leaders, and they were, as you might imagine, somber, emotional. But you know what? We have a group of very intelligent student athletes here. I think we all know that. And while there is certainly a sadness, you could also tell that there was a sense that we know how life works, and we know when people make certain decisions, and hopefully they believe that ours was well-reasoned and thought out and taken in consideration what we want to provide experience-wise for the young men in that room who are sophomores and freshmen and juniors who have some years left here. Very frankly, I apologize to the seniors that in their 3 years here, most of them, we haven't taken them to a major bowl game. And we missed last year. You know, some folks are okay with going to the Cactus Bowl and even the Sun Bowl, which is the 5th ranked bowl amongst the Pac-12 contracted bowls of 7. That means you're just the 5th best team in the conference. And if you're going to the Cactus Bowl or the Las Vegas Bowls, that means you're the 6th or 7th best team in your own conference. It's good for the experience of going and get those extra practices. But if anyone here is satisfied with that, I don't understand it. I'm not. Our players aren't. There's no question, Greg. So we were talking to them, and I think they understood what we were saying and why we were doing what we're doing. Because we want a better experience for them as well as our own institution on a consistent, competitive basis. Not an up and down, one week this, the next week that basis. That's not what we're about.
You talked about being top 15. How do you get there?
You get there by doing what we're talking about, which is upgrading your competitive performance in all those areas I mentioned. Recruiting, player development. You can recruit them, but when you get here, are you developing them to play at the high level and hopefully be able to play at the NFL if they want to because you've actually developed them? Coaching development and retention. We've had a lot of turnover. There's all kind of reasons why that is, but at the end of the day, a head coach is responsible for developing and then retaining his coaches so you can have continuity. And then, again, in-game management and game preparation. You figure that out, Craig, and I have great belief that we can get there.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Again, thank you for coming. Thanks, Ray. If everybody would like to move to the North End Media Room, everybody knows where that is, Coach Graham would like to address you. So as soon as you get there and get set up, we'll make that happen. In the North End.